Elizabeth, welcome to Waterstones, first of all.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
It's great to have you here, and I think it's great to have Olive back in our lives again. I think anyone who's read Olive Kitteridge will know her voice and her character and her mannerisms. And I wondered first, when was it you started to hear that voice again, demanding to be written about?
Well, I had never expected to hear it again. I had never expected for her to reappear in my life. But I don't know, probably 4 years ago, I just can't really remember exactly, but I was sitting in a cafe in Norway and I was just checking my emails and she just showed up. She just showed up again, and I saw her nosing her car into the marina and getting out of the car, only this time she had a cane. Mm-hmm. And I realized, okay, she's older, but she was still so Olive. And so I realized I had to get it down right away because she's Olive.
Yeah.
And attention must be paid when Olive shows up. So I did. So I wrote it down quickly, and within a few days I had sketched out that particular chapter called The Poet. Mm-hmm. And then I realized, we're back.
There's more.
She's back, yeah.
Let's talk a bit about actually the form of the books, because those chapters are almost sort of separate
Yeah,
they're
separate stories, right.
Why was it that was the form that the story took?
Right, because in the original Olive Kitteridge I wrote one story, the story at her son's wedding. That was the first story I wrote in that. And then I realized, I thought, I'm going to write a book called Olive Stories. But then as I was putting it together, I realized, she's an awful lot to take on every page. If I was a reader, I wouldn't want to see Olive on every single page. And then I realized that, I'm always interested in how people think they know somebody, but they really only know a certain part of them. And then somebody else knows a different part of them. Mm-hmm. And so that got me interested in seeing Olive from different people's points of view in town. And then they became characters in and of themselves. And so that's how I wrote that. And then when I returned to Olive, because she's episodic.
Yeah.
It's like that's what comes through my mind, is that she's episodic and therefore she can only have a certain amount of stage time because she's a lot.
And it does allow you to, I suppose, to shine a light or to put the focus on different people from the same community.
Exactly. And the community itself almost becomes a character.
Yeah.
When I sit down to write, I'm always thinking about the character.
Yeah.
I'm always concerned with the character first and foremost. But because people live in a place and time in history, then their place becomes apparent to me right away. Like when I saw Olive, I could see the trees. I mean, she was already in her place.
Yeah.
And so the place and the landscape become apparent rather quickly. But I do start always with a character.
What's really interesting with Olive as a character is, in Olive again, a few other characters sort of begrudgingly, I suppose, admit that they always kind of liked her. They say, well, I've always sort of thought she's okay.
Right.
Because she's seen as this sort of cantankerous old woman.
Right.
But actually, they do like her. And I wondered why it was you thought that other people do actually like her, despite the fact that she can be very, very difficult.
Right. Well, it's funny because you only catch little glimpses of people say, well, I always liked her. She may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I always liked her. And so the person saying that is somebody that I recognize who will appreciate Olive's qualities. As opposed to having been the brunt of her qualities, And
you mentioned that when these news stories came to you, that you saw immediately that she was older, and this idea of aging is so important in the book. And also, I suppose, tied with it, this idea of loneliness. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, she starts off lonely because she's lost her husband, Henry, and then she gets married to Jack Hennison, which is like so bizarre in a way. But as I was writing about Jack and Olive, I realized they actually made a certain kind of sense. They made perfect sense in a certain kind of way because they were both able to be themselves with each other. And then she loses Jack. And then she begins to have a different level of loneliness after that. And then at the end, she's not as lonely because she's found a friend. But I think that there are many people in the world, but in my country, and I'm sure yours as well, who do end up living alone and find the days longer than they used to find them.
Yeah, there's an interesting conversation she has with a Somali nurse.
Right.
Where there's a difference in culture where the Somali nurse is talking about how families stay together.
That's right.
Whereas in Western societies, as Olive says, my son gets married, he leaves home and that's it.
That's right.
It's a interesting...
And that was true. I mean, when I wrote that, I realized that's actually true.
Yeah. The thing also that struck me as well was there's something about writing older women. So again, when I was filming with another author, Bernadine Evaristo, who was one of the joint winners of the Booker Prize this year,
Yeah.
and she said that the book Girl, Woman, Other that she had written, she could only have written now that she was older,
Right.
because she wanted to write about older women. And she said, when you're young, authors tend to write old women as kind of mad old bags, and that's all they are.
Right.
And she needed more time to
Right.
sort of think about what it is to be an older woman.
Right.
And you, of course, were published when you were in your 40s, and you've
Right.
been writing. I just wondered whether you
Right.
felt that maturity
Yeah.
has helped you to write these books.
Absolutely, it has, because I've gotten older, and so Olive gets older. I mean, she's older than I am, obviously, but my understanding of the world, and just watching, because I'm always watching and observing people all the time, and there are plenty of people, particularly in Maine, as I said, anywhere, but in New York they're harder to watch in their homes, because they're on the sidewalk, and you can tell, oh, that person is struggling because they're older or something like that. But in Maine, I have been able to observe and watch and seen people who are going through these kinds of transitions.
Allied to this idea, I suppose, of wisdom that comes with age is also that capacity to be surprised. Olive is still constantly discovering things about.
Exactly.
And
That's
I think
right.
that's quite an interesting theme throughout the book, actually, with people being surprised about what they discover about even their own family and very close friends.
Right. And she, Olive continues to grow in this book, to a real extent, actually. Like when the home health care workers come over, and the Somali worker comes, and then the other woman comes with the bumper sticker, that awful orange-haired man that Olive, would rather die than be seen with that bumper sticker. But Betty, who has the bumper sticker, it was very interesting for me as I wrote that story to realize how that story was going to turn out, because Olive actually, she's upset with Betty, but then she realizes, well, Betty has her life. So tell me about your life, Betty. And I thought, oh, look at you, Olive. You're actually, really asking somebody to tell them about their lives. And Betty just says, oh, it's just a life. And she said, well, it's your life. I'd like to know. And then, so that was an interesting story for me. And I realized that Olive is growing. She's continuing to grow. And she's able to, at that point in her life, actually be curious.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she's always been curious, but, she's got the wherewithal now to act on it.
So there's a difference between the curiosity of observing somebody and then actually engaging them in conversation.
Exactly, right. And saying, tell me. And then the last line in that story, I thought, oh, now it works as a story.